You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. Welcome to Dolphins Talk Weekly, your one-stop audio breakdown of all of this week's Miami Dolphins news. Now, here is your host, Kevin Dern.
Welcome to another installment of Dolphins Talk Weekly. I am your host, Kevin Dern, coming to you after the Dolphins beat the Washington Commanders 45-15 on the heels of a 34-13 win over the New York Jets on Black Friday a little more than a week ago. I apologize for not getting an episode out after the Jets game, but due to some family traveling over the Thanksgiving weekend and the game being on Friday, my schedule just did not line up with it. But I'm here now, and we're going to recap the 30-point road win over the Washington Commanders as the Dolphins head into a stretch with 4 of their final 5 contests at home at Hard Rock Stadium. And yours truly will be in attendance for the game next Monday night against the Tennessee Titans. So a lot of excitement going around with the Miami Dolphins after their 3 straight wins out of the bye. But we're going to cover the game against the Commanders in full today. It was an enjoyable family vacation. We went to Nashville, ironically, because the Titans are who I'm seeing play in Miami next week. Good family trip with my in-law side of the family. And this weekend, with the Dolphins winning, that completed my 3-for-3 trifecta. Arsenal took care of business against Wolverhampton earlier on Saturday, and then my beloved Dayton Flyers, who've started off pretty nicely this college basketball season, took care of business beating Grambling State. You can catch the Flyers this Wednesday as they host UNLV, kind of their last big home game of the non-conference slate. But the crown jewel is the Dolphins' 45-15 victory over the Commanders, and with that, we will bring back the Victory Monday sip, and we've got the good stuff because that was a good win. Lagavulin 11, the Charred Oak Cask for tonight. So here's our victory sip. That one's always good, and I've noticed with this bottle, kind of each new time I open it to pour a glass, you get a little bit of something different on the palate. This one can taste a little more of the charred oak than before, which is kind of a unique experience as you drink it. I really like it, and I really like the Dolphins' victory on Sunday, and let's get into that right now. First things first, just kind of the overall vibe of the team coming out of that win. You know, we heard it from Mike McDaniel in the post-game. He talked about there was clearly a focus on what happens going into December this year. If you remember last year, the Dolphins 8-3, same record. They went out on the back-to-back West Coast trips and got beat both games. The starting game of that 5-game losing streak was to San Francisco. They had a road game this year, kind of the same deal. They went to DC and pummeled the Commanders. You know, Tua talked about it in the post game. He said everyone's starting to do a little more. You know, on their Wednesday practices, they don't have meetings scheduled after practice. They went out, and I said a lot of the guys are meeting extra on their own with coaches after practice. A lot of guys are staying more on the field on their own after practice because the team collectively knows what they're going to do. They know what they can accomplish. They think they can really make a run at it. And I agree, and I think everyone is kind of all hands on deck ready for this ride as we go into December. I think they did a really nice job. The Commanders team, especially the defense, has been really bad this year. You know, only 2 wins in their last 10 games going into today, because they started the year 2-0. Awful defense. It was just one of those games where if Miami took care of business, didn't turn the ball over, didn't make dumb mistakes or dumb penalties, they were going to win this game. It was just a matter of what the final score was going to be. And as we saw last week against the Jets, as we saw, in Germany against Kansas City, these road games haven't been kind to the Dolphins. We saw it happen in Philly. We saw it happen in Buffalo, where they've had sort of order of operations failures from a play calling, getting the play into Tua getting the guys out of the huddle, Tua getting the guys lined up. Hasn't always been crisp on the road, especially in the 3 losses. We didn't really see that much against New York last week, but we saw dumb turnovers, and the guys kind of talked about it today in the post game. They knew Tua was going to have a good game because he was so pissed at himself for the 2 awful interceptions he threw against the Jets. You kind of knew that was coming. Today, there really weren't any issues. No turnovers at all. Didn't have any order of operations stuff, and to my knowledge, let's see here, I'm pulling up the box score, I think they only had like 1 or 2 penalties the entire game. Yeah, Miami had 2 penalties for 15 yards in the contest. So they did all the little things right. As you might hear, my co-host Chloe, our pit lab, has come down to join the recording session. But all those things put together lead to the 5th largest road win in team history, a 30-point margin. And that is the largest margin in a road win that the team has had since the 1970s. So pretty cool to see that. Kind of got some information passed down to me from one of my, we'll call it well-placed moles, and this was corroborated by Mike McDaniel and Daniel Olufusi after the game. Teron Armstead, if you go back and watch the touchdown run right before halftime to make it 31-7, someone in the pile for Washington gets pushed and they fall, and their cleats end up going into Teron's, and he gets kind of sideswiped, which is, I think, why they said it was an ankle injury. It looked more like an injury in soccer where, like, the studs of the cleats kind of catch someone in the shin rather than anything serious. Was told during the game, really during halftime by my source, that Teron was okay. He could play if needed, but that they were probably going to rest him just because of the margin of the lead at that point, being up 31-7. And hats off to Keon Smith. He's come in now 2 weeks in a row, really, and acquitted himself pretty well. Rob Hunt aggravated the hamstring injury that he had. It's not as serious as it was. That is one to monitor for this week, because as rough a season as the Tennessee Titans have had, they have some threats on the D-line, and we'll talk about that at the end of the show when we preview the Titans contest. And then Jerome Baker, as bad as that looked, McDaniel reiterated this: the vibe, as he said, is not that it's season ending. He's getting an MRI tomorrow, per his agent Drew Rosenhaus. Told that to Josh Moser on Sports Extra. Sounds like he'll be out. The question is for how long. And then Miami, we'll talk about the options there when we cover the defense, has some in-house options. I don't think they'll be in a rush to go out and go after someone like a Shaq Leonard or something like that. So let's start. We'll review the Commanders game on offense, defense, and then we'll shift at the end of the show and preview the Monday Night Football matchup coming up next week against the Tennessee Titans. And as we do this, keep in mind I am recording this as Sunday Night Football is going on, so any stat that you hear is taken into account going into effect before Sunday Night Football kicked off. So as I'm recording this right now with, a little over 5 minutes left in the third, Green Bay has scored again. They lead 21-12. We are all Packers fans tonight. Go Pack Go. If they win and the Bengals win tomorrow on this week's Monday Night Football edition, Miami will be the number 1 seed in the AFC going into next week. So that's kind of a cool thing. So go Packers. And, for my friends in the area, for those that don't remember, or are new to the podcast, I live just outside of Cincinnati, so Houday, go Bengals tomorrow night. Offensively, to me, everyone's going to make this about Tyreek Hill, and deservedly so. He had a great day. But Tua is the story for me. Like some of the players mentioned, not that he needed a huge rebound after, a blowout win over the Jets, but to see him come in and operate as surgically as he did today against a bad pass defense, the worst in the league, you did what you were supposed to do, Tua. You carved them up, navigated the pocket extremely well. Washington's got some pretty nice interior players with Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. Casey Tuhill has, I think, 5 sacks on the year now that they've traded away Chase Young and Montez Sweat. But you did exactly what you were supposed to do, and then kind of caught Ron Rivera calling some bad matchups. Tyreek talked about this after the game. Tua audibled to him when he saw that on the play, the Commanders had one single high safety. I'm so used to saying that about the New England. The Commanders had one single high safety and shaded it towards the side where Devon Achane was. And he basically, gave Tyreek Hill the signal, take it deep, hit him for a 78-yard touchdown. The interesting thing is on that play, even though the safety cheated over to Devon Achane's side, and you'll see this on the All-22, he could have had a 78-yard touchdown just as easily as Tyreek Hill, if not more easily, because they blew that coverage completely on that side. Tyreek also talked about how on the second touchdown, he ran the wrong route, and then Tua had tried to throw it, originally it was to be thrown towards, the near side hash, but Tua saw that the middle of the field safety was there, so he led Tyreek back outside towards the numbers, and he threw it to the inside edge of the numbers where Tyreek caught it. Incredible adjustment by Tyreek, but I think maybe they were supposed to be, a corner route or a Dino route rather than a post, and then Tyreek adjusting on the fly. But I thought Tua was pretty surgical. He was decisive. His maneuvering within the pocket was superb. He had the real nice play towards the goal line when he sidestepped the rusher and threw it ahead. I believe that one was to either Waddle or Craycraft. Just overall, great command of the offense. Didn't have any trouble in the huddle. Was efficient. Completed 75% of his passes, 200-plus yards, the 2 touchdowns to Tyreek. You got some other guys involved. Achane had 3 catches. River Craycraft had 2. Julian Hill had 2. It's been interesting to see him get more involved in the passing game the last 2 or 3 weeks. I think he's a little bit more dynamic in terms of route running and getting up the field than Durham Smythe. So that's an interesting development for me to watch. But Tua, no turnovers, no dumb penalties, no mismanaging, getting in and out of the huddle, getting plays called, getting guys lined up. That's all a very, very good sign for things to come. And at least in terms of the regular season, you've only got one more road contest left. So good sign that they finally got that stuff cleaned up. I texted with someone before the game about this. There was a nice duo last week with Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Ran hard, got tough yards against the Jets. But Miami's offense is so much more dynamic when you have Mostert and Achane able to kind of be the 1-2. And we saw that punch today. Achane had over 100 total yards, had 2 touchdowns. Mostert, felt like they kind of rested him once they got to halftime and got him the score. I expect we'll see a lot more of those 2 guys as kind of the 1-2 or 1A, 1B moving forward as we get into this 4 home games in 5 week stretch here. Very good overall performance by both of those guys. Didn't see the yards per carry that we've seen in previous weeks in the run game. Had some line issues in flux. I know Teron Armstead's become kind of a popular whipping boy amongst the fan base for his injuries and availability. It's, to me, that's bullshit. we have a lot of fans, some who don't have the greatest understanding of football and everything that it takes to get prepared and be active and going through the week injured. And, if you haven't played the game on, certain levels, you don't have a sense of what that takes. And for someone to be as good as Teron Armstead has been with all the injuries he's had, just kind of, it feels like a disservice to me, even though, Teron Armstead probably doesn't see a whole bunch of this. It just seems like a general disservice to the amount of work he's put in to get ready and try and get back. And he's had some unfortunate, injuries this year, getting rolled up on twice by members of his own team from behind that he couldn't see, got his ankles taken out today by someone who got thrown across a pile. It's not like they're just straight up injuries where, it's his Achilles breaking or something like that, Anyway, the Dolphins are a lot better when Teron Armstead is in the lineup. So just felt like that had to be said. And I imagine our run game performance will probably reflect as such when he is back in, because there's a lot that you can do. And Miami seems to have thrown in the wrinkle now where, you have Tua turn one way and kind of pitch it the other. Worked a couple times, but Washington seemed to have that pretty snuffed out. And some of that was due to the fact that they couldn't get blocks on the edge, especially when running to the right in the game at certain times on that play. So that's another interesting thing to watch is what happens there with Teron Armstead. It sounds like he'll be okay and probably be able to go against Tennessee, which will be important because this is a dangerous front that Miami's going to have to face against the Titans. We talked about this. The O-line as a whole did really well in the pass game, did not allow a sack. Tua only got hit twice during the game, had a pretty clean jersey. They did some really nice work in the run game. You think back to Devon Achan's final touchdown where Keon Smith got outside and pancaked the corner. Liam Eichenberg continues to impress today playing at left guard. That's a pretty tough assignment, having Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne as the two defensive tackles that you're facing the majority of the time. Didn't really have any issues with his game. He's really improved at guard, I think, since they tried him at center. And he talked about that leading up to the Raiders game, how playing center has kind of helped him at other positions. And he can kind of see, what the assignments are and what he's supposed to do a little bit better. So I do kind of wonder if Rob Hunt is able to go, does Liam Eichenberg stay ahead of Rob Jones at left guard when Jones is able to return? Because they put Eichenberg ahead of Lester Cotton, and rightfully so today. We'll have to see if that continues. Defensively, another really, really nice performance, especially in the pass game. Terry McLaurin, one of the more dangerous receivers in the NFL, held without a catch. Sam Howell, going into today's games, was leading the NFL in passing. Got held to 12 for 23 for 127 yards, a pick six, and was sacked 3 times, hit a bunch more. He's going to be banged and bruised coming into the facility tomorrow morning. One of the interesting things to me is that Fangio, and this is in his playbook, I have from the 2017 season when he was with the Chicago Bears. He doesn't show it much. I talked about this over the summer, though. There is some cover zero stuff in that playbook, and we saw that early and often. And it was kind of poignant because Fangio had talked about this. I forget which reporter asked the question leading up to the game, but he said, there's certain quarterbacks where we can kind of spook them or trick them, and I'm paraphrasing here. We can trick them into seeing things with their eyes. That was leading up to the Jets game where you can kind of get them to key on something falsely and make a throw that's beneficial to the defense. Whereas other guys, they get spooked more with pressure coming right in your face. And, Washington going into today's game, led the league in sacks allowed with 55. They gave up 3 more today. I feel like had Jalen Phillips played, he probably closes on 2 or 3 in that game. No disrespect to Andrew Van Ginkel, who had a really nice one early. But there's just that ability to kind of close and bend that Jalen Phillips has that Van Ginkel doesn't. Thought the team played really well. Zach Sealer, Christian Wilkins were involved in a lot of games up front. I feel like we saw more linebackers blitzing, especially David Long, than we have, really in quite some time. Kind of the week 2 game against New England kind of comes to mind off the top of my head in terms of linebacker blitzing. But they got guys into the backfield. And I did like that in some of those blitzes where, they had one where Bradley Chubb kind of crashed inside, Long came around, and then they brought Kader Kohu right behind it and forced Hal into a quick decision and a bad throw. Held the Commanders to 6 out of 14 on third downs. Did some really nice work. Going into the game, they were 6th in the league in run defense, giving up just under 93 yards a game. They fell back to 8th because they gave up, over, 120 some today to the Commanders, 138 to the Commanders. That dropped their average back down to around 96 or 98 yards per game allowed. But if you really look at it, it's the one big run where Brian Robinson got 29 yards off to the right side. Emmanuel Ogbah kind of got caught trying to peek inside while setting the edge and got stuck. And they had inserted a linebacker with a blitz, so no one was to the outside. And Miami missed a tackle, and Robinson got a big gain. They did a pretty nice job on Antonio Gibson, 10 for 35. Chris Rodriguez, 7 for 29, had a 15-yarder. And then Sam Howell had one 15-yard touchdown run. That kind of drove the numbers up. Some of that you can attribute to not having Jerome Baker, just kind of that steady physical presence that he brings in the ground game. You don't really get that as much with Duke Riley. I thought Riley played pretty well in the pass game, did a nice job snuffing out the screen attempt late in the game. But you look at the kind of the drop-off in physicality, that's a must fix going into this game against Tennessee, against Derrick Henry. I think what Miami tried to do to counter Washington's run game once Baker was out was they started run blitzing a lot. And when you run blitz into some of the double teams that Washington was using as part of their inside zone and part of their duo stuff, it can leave you with some pretty open cutback lanes. Now, I think Miami were fortunate today that you were facing Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, and Chris Rodriguez instead of Derrick Henry. You do that against Derrick Henry and Tyjae Spears next Monday, and they'll make you pay. So, all the best to Jerome Baker. Hopefully it's a speedy recovery. One interesting thing of note late in the game, Channing Tindall got some run on defense and played much more physically than Duke Riley in the few snaps that he got. I would be very intrigued to see if they build in some sort of package for Tindall if Jerome Baker misses the game against Tennessee. But even despite the slight drop-off in run defensive performance today, other than the injuries to Jalen Phillips last week and Baker today, the defense, you have the personnel group that you've been expecting all year, and they finally have started to play, especially, really from the Kansas City game on. Even before that, New England, they've played how I expected them to play under Fangio, and Fangio is finally using the personnel how I expected them to be used, and it's paid off. Miami is 6th in total defense, 9th in pass defense, 8th in run defense. They are tied for 3rd with 41 sacks. 41 is more than all of the sacks they had in 2022, and there are still 5 regular season games left to go. Miami had 40 sacks all of last year. They are 22nd in points allowed at like 22.3 or something like that. If you take out the points that are attributable to special teams and Miami's offense, which is 46 of them, there might actually be more. I think I'd have to go back and look at the Buffalo game. There might have been a touchdown because of Raheem Mostert's fumble at the end of the first half. But let's just say it's the 46 that we've accounted for on the podcast over the last couple weeks. That would drop Miami's points per game allowed to 18.3, which would be tied for fourth in the league. So that points allowed number is a little bit hidden meaning in there. They're better than what that number would tell you. Chloe's getting a little impatient in the background, so we'll have another sip of our Lagavulin 11 before we preview the Titans. So today, the Commanders game was a take care of business. Do what you're supposed to do, you're going to win. Same deal Monday night. Tennessee, they're 4-8. They have not been good on the road all season long. They're 0-6. They do not play well. They're starting a rookie quarterback in Will Levis, so Vic Fangio is probably going to cook up some things to make him look pretty bad at times. They don't have a lot of weapons in the pass game outside of Treylon Burks and Chiga Kwankwo. Tennessee in total, 26th in total O, 27th in passing O, 17th in the run, and they're only scoring 17.8 points per game, which is 25th. Essentially in this game, if you can get to 21 or 24 points, you're probably going to beat Tennessee just because they don't have the firepower to stay with you. Where this can hurt you, as our dog Chloe pretends to be hurt in the background because I'm not petting her at the moment, where it can hurt you is if you don't get a lead and you allow Tennessee to kind of make this a grimy game, run the ball, control the clock, sort of what Green Bay was doing to Kansas City tonight. That game is 21-19 now as we've just entered the fourth quarter. Tennessee especially is awful on third down offense. They are converting at only a 32.2% rate, which is 30th in the NFL, ahead of only the Giants and Jets. So if you can stop the run and get them into third down situations, you're going to win this game. 3 touchdowns and control the third down game on defense is enough to do it. The key matchup for Miami is going to be Tennessee's front three, the interior guys. They have Danico Autry and Tier Tart along with Jeffrey Simmons, and I think it was Mina Kimes and someone else had made up sort of the all-hipster team of the NFL last year. David Long was on it. He's now a Dolphin. But Danico Autry and Tier Tart are two guys that are very underrated at what they do. Big, strong, physical guys, especially Autry. That dude's got a pair of sledgehammers for hands, which is why I talked about earlier, if Rob Hunt doesn't go, the guys who play in his place, whether it's, it'll be Eichenberg plus someone, whether it's Lester Cotton or Rob Jones, you better bring your lunch pail because these boys are going to work. Jeffrey Simmons is a game wrecker inside. They have some really good speed at linebacker with Azeez Al-Shire, and their rushers on the edge aren't super challenging. Harold Landry can be slippery, and the fact that he's short, has a low center of gravity, kind of helps him. Arden Keyes, the other one, he's got some speed, some length. I've never really been impressed with him. He's not super physical or strong. You should be able to control the edges, and I was kind of surprised how well Miami controlled the edges against New York. This is a game where you need to attack the edges because it's going to be tough sledding if you try and run up the middle, sort of the same way it was with the Commanders today. Conversely, on the other side of the football, this is a game where Bradley Chubb, Andrew Van Ginkel, Emmanuel Ogbah, Jason Pierre-Paul, if he plays, those four can really take over Tennessee's tackles, they're names that you'll probably recognize as Dolphins fans from all of the draft coverage that we've had in the Dolphins community over the last few years, but their left tackle is Andre Dillard. Their right tackle is Dylan Radins. Miami ought to be able to win those matchups pretty easily. The one player who I think could really give Miami some trouble, especially in the screen game or if they start using Tyjae Spears to get out wide, is their center, Aaron Brewer. Very, very mobile guy. Likes to play on the run. Kind of reminds me, I hate to even bring up this name because he was such a tough SOB to go against. Reminds me a little bit of Kevin Mawai in terms of his just movement skill and his ability to do things on the hoof. Pretty impressive to me. So where you have the huge advantages, their receiving weapons aren't up to snuff. It's Treylon Burks and the Hawaiian kid Akine. That's really about it. You've got the tight end Chig from Maryland, who's made some nice plays, more of an H-back, fullback type. This game to me is if you can take away Tennessee's run game, easier said than done with Derrick Henry and then not having Jerome Baker in all likelihood. If you can take away their run game and put them in third down situations, they're going to crumble. It's just a matter of time. So it's a TCOB game. Take care of your business. Don't have dumb penalties. Don't have mistakes. Don't get overhyped playing in front of the home crowd, probably wearing the Aqua jerseys for all the people who keep asking. Primetime home game. Just take care of business, and this game will take care of itself. And that's going to do it for me on this episode. Chloe needs to go outside, so we're going to cut this short. Thank you guys. Enjoy the victory Monday over the Commanders. Have a great week. Stay healthy, stay safe, and fins up.